As I was reading the text for this Sunday, which is the parable of the sower, I was struck by the first word that Jesus speaks, which is listen. One wouldn't think that it was necessary for Jesus to tell the crowds to listen. After all, they had come to hear Jesus, so certainly they would listen. But as I thought about it, I realized that there are different kinds of listening. When we had our black lab, Bella, Linda would often say something to her to get her attention, and she wouldn't even move her head. It was as if all she heard was blah, blah, blah. We know she did this just on purpose to bug Linda. But if I said something to her, her ears would perk up and she would turn toward me and often get up in excitement and expectation to do something. Jesus knows that physically hearing the words is not enough. We need to hear with our whole being, our whole heart and spirit. That's what's called deep listening. When we are deep listening, we listen with compassion. When we listen to understand, we listen with the intention to act. When we open our ears, we open our hearts. When I was in school, there eventually came a time when the teacher, who was usually saying something to us, would tell us to listen because the material will be on the test. Suddenly we sat up straighter and were all ears because we got the message that what was coming was really important. In our world today, it has become so much more important that we listen deeply to the voices that are speaking with care and compassion out of the pain in our communities. When we do, we become alerted to what's happening around us and take it to heart. God has spoken through the centuries to the people of God with a word that addresses the needs of the most vulnerable in our world, hoping that indeed we would listen and act on those words. The prophet Isaiah spoke of the power of God's word, a word that would not return empty. That word contains a whole lot of promise. The promise that God's word keeps coming to us. The promise that God's word does something. We may not see it or experience it, but it is actually working, even without our doing anything. The word is here with us now in this moment of history with its persistence. As we witness to the truth of the gospel, our acts of faithfulness will not return empty, but will accomplish that which God purposes and succeed in the thing for which God sent it. God sends God's word out for all to hear. And since we all have ears, as Jesus says, let anyone with ears listen.